Gosh, that almost was a total nightmare. My fly was down right as I got onto stage. Nice to meet y'all. I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you, Michael, for having me back. Coolest conference. I go to a lot of conferences, speak at a lot of conferences, and these ones are always my favorite just because they're so laid back, they're so chill, they're so fun. It's a different vibe altogether. My name is Vince Kadlubek. I'm the founder and director of Meow Wolf. And Meow Wolf is an arts and entertainment production company in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We have a mission that I think is relevant to any industry. It's also relevant to any business. It's also relevant to any person. We inspire creativity in people's lives so that the imagination can transform our world. And it's a pretty straightforward mission. It's easy to kind of just let it wash over you and not really have much impact. But there's really big words in here. And the story that I'm going to tell, how Meow Wolf came to be and what we're doing as a company, I think will match this mission. You'll get a sense of what it is that I'm talking about. And the future, our future, anyone's future, a business's future, a whole industry's future, is first started in the imagination. The imagination is where we look into the future and then make it so. Transformation is when we move from where we are today, where we have been in the past, and transform into who we're becoming into the future. And this is a monumental mission. This is a monumental thing that happens in people's lives. So if we can inspire that, we're definitely doing something. This is a project that we just opened in September in Denver, Colorado. This is a permanent, purpose-built, 50,000 square foot, 5-story building in downtown Denver. That's this weird kind of soggy pizza slice shape of a building that fits in between 3 intersections of roads. It's a $125 million project. It's crazy for me to even say that. But this isn't how we started. This is where our imagination, our belief in ourself, our belief in a future vision, this is where we ended up. But where we started was in Santa Fe, New Mexico. There's a bunch of 20-somethings without any money in 2008, working restaurant jobs, hotel jobs, just scraping to get by, barely even able to pay our own rent at our houses. And we lived in Santa Fe, and Santa Fe is a very creative town. It's very artsy, has a lot of galleries. And we were 20-something artists in the town that we grew up in, yet we didn't feel like we were even welcome in our own city. We didn't feel like we fit the identity that Santa Fe was trying to express out to the world. Sunsets and turquoise and cowboy boots and old people. We were young and loud and wanted to stay up at night, wanted to party. We wanted to create explosive artwork. We wanted to express ourselves culturally, and we couldn't find a place to do it. So we decided, stop waiting for people to invite us into their space and instead just create a space of our own. So we started Meow Wolf, chose the name out of 2 hats. Meow came out of 1 hat, Wolf came out of the other. And we all basically got together and were let's pitch in $50, $100 a month each, and we can pay rent on a space. It's we spent around that much on weed every month anyway, so it's just hey guys, let's just shift our priorities here, and we can have our own art gallery. So that's what we did, and we started pulling materials out of dumpsters, because that's really the best place and the most affordable place that we could find materials. So, and we started to build these really kind of rugged, trashy forts, ultimately. We were just 20-somethings who were still little kids just wanting to build forts. And we were building spaces that like people should not have been crawling around in, but they were. Opened it to the public. Maybe like 30 people would come to our openings, and I'd be running around like making sure that we had cardboard boxes set up that said donations on the side, so that in hopes of people like maybe hooking us up with like $5 or $10, we would then just spend that money on like beer and weed. And then in 2000, so this happened for like 6 or 7 years. And then in 2014, we were, all in our 30s now. And what kind of had started as like a passion project for a bunch of like idealistic 20-somethings now was like an obligation for a bunch of 30-somethings. Like we're adults now, we need to figure out what we're doing with our lives, we need careers, we need to go to college, some people want to start families. Like what are we doing spending so much of our time and extra energy and extra money on Meow Wolf? But I really believed that we could do something special in the world. I really believed in this future vision that was in my imagination that we could really change the world. And I saw this old building. This is like an old bowling alley in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's 30,000 square feet. And it was gutted. And I walked through it. And I walked through it with a real estate agent. I was like, man, this place would be perfect. Like if we could just have this space, we could build like the Meow Wolf exhibit that we always wanted to build. We could build it permanently. We could charge an admission price. And we could actually do this like the right way. He's like, cool, man, how much money do you have to put down as a down payment? I was like, dude, we got no money. He's like, how much money does Meow Wolf have? I was like, no, but nobody in Meow Wolf has any money to buy this building. He said, okay, well, do you know anybody who has money? Like, is there anybody that you can reach out to and say, hey, will you buy this building? I said, well, yeah, there's one guy that I know, this guy who's the author of Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin. And I emailed George, and I said, George, are you interested in buying a bowling alley? I got a meeting with him. He basically was like, no, I'm not really interested in buying a bowling alley. But then I started like kind of just tugging on all of his heartstrings, just like pressing all of his buttons. I was like, but dude, we're gonna build this like crazy house inside of the bowling alley. And then in the house, there's gonna be secret passageways, and it's gonna take you to like crazy like sci-fi fantasy worlds, man. It's gonna be the coolest thing. He's like, all right, cool, let's do it. So like 4 months after I talked to him the first time, George closed on the bowling alley and leased it to us. And so like all of a sudden, George R.R. Martin is our landlord, which was crazy. And this is at the same time in Game of Thrones, which is basically all the time, where he was just like chopping the heads off of all of the heroes. So I was like, shit, I'm the hero now. What's gonna happen? And when the first time, I just like telling this story. It's a little bit of a side story, but like the first time we walked through the bowling alley, there's like this 30,000 square foot building in front of him that he might buy, but he was totally fixated on this bowling pin sign. Like he was like in the parking lot, just like staring at the bowling pin sign. And he's like, if I buy the bowling alley, can we keep the bowling pin sign? I was like, yeah, dude, we can put in the lease that we keep the sign. In March of 2016, we opened Meow Wolf Santa Fe. It's our first permanent exhibition, first permanent experience. And it's all centered around this story called the House of Eternal Return. So the way that we looked at it, it's like we're going to build an experiential storytelling exhibition, and it's all going to take place inside of this Victorian house. So you buy a ticket, you walk in, you stand in the front, you open the door, and you're like immediately standing in front of this Victorian house on the lawn. It's nighttime. There's like crickets. There's a nice little soundtrack playing, and from this point forward, you as a guest have total agency to move in whatever direction you want to go. You can go around like the side of the house. Most people go in through the front door. And there's no real point. It's like we don't give you a guide, we don't give you a map, we don't give you a list of tasks. We don't tell you what you're supposed to do. We just basically say, do whatever you want. And people walk through the house and they start to like learn about the family that lives there. And it's a family from Mendocino, California. They have twins. The uncle sleeps on the couch because he's having a hard time. And you can go through all of their belongings. You can read their journals. You can watch their home movies. You can look through their photo albums. You can dig through their drawers, look at their clothes, sleep on their bed, lay on their bed, whatever you want to do inside their house. You start to realize that there's like something wonky kind of going on with the house. And you get to the kitchen and get to the fridge and open it up, and you realize that the fridge is not a normal fridge, that it's a secret passageway into who knows what. Or you might get to the dryer and open the dryer, and it's like a tube slide that goes into who knows where. And if there's one thing that we learned through this whole process, is that people really want to go through their household appliances. This is like some sort of deep-seated like need in people's lives. Because they just go through these appliances over and over again, like selfies and TikToks and Instagrams, and they just like love it. But it struck a chord, and it's kind of a joke, but it's actually kind of true. It's like sort of the point of this entire presentation for me. It's like, we grow up in a very predictable environment. Even though everybody kind of grows up differently, we all have different, backstories, different families, but we all kind of live in a very similar context. The appliances are very similar. The houses are very similar. The neighborhoods are very similar. And as a kid, you're like, is this it? Is this really all there is? Isn't there something like beyond these parameters, beyond these boundaries? You kind of always hoped that there's something else in the future. There's something beyond the parameters of the known. And then once you go through, you end up in this like crazy psychedelic jungle gym art world where like the mushrooms are musical instruments that you can play, and you can like hang out in the tree house. And it's about 20,000 square feet of just like visually striking art. Actually, I want to go back to this slide because a funny little story. When we opened House of Eternal Return in March, it was like one of the first couple days that were open, and I was just kind of strolling through the forest, just like seeing how people were reacting to the exhibit. And I saw this like 10-year-old girl walk into the forest, and the moment she got in there, she like drops to her knees, she puts her hands in the air, and she says, "I've been waiting my whole life for this." It's like, damn, we are on to something. But yeah, it's just like, it's kind of a maze of different visually striking, interactive, playful, explorable zones, all crafted from sculptors and painters and technologists. Like these stalagmites and stalactites are musical instruments. All of those little like lit dots on there are different sounds that you can create when you go up there, so you can kind of play music together. Lots of Instagrammable moments, lots of things that can be shared on social media, of course, like that's not surprising. This is also a musical instrument. This is a laser harp. So you walk up and you can pluck, there's like 30 strings, and you can pluck the different lasers and play music together on that. And we didn't exactly know like what was gonna happen. We opened this not really knowing how people would react. Like we knew for sure that the Burning Man crowd would love it. And we knew that like ravers, would love it. Kids going to EDC would like, stop in, or like weirdo, freaky, artsy families would dig it. But we had no idea that like people of all backgrounds would be traveling to Santa Fe to see the House of Eternal Return. These are people like who have never stepped foot in an art gallery before, never stepped foot in a museum before. People of all ages. This is like kids all the way up to people in their 70s or 80s coming to see Meow Wolf's House of Eternal Return. And in fact, 25% of our guests in Santa Fe are over the age of 65. So it's a massive range. There's people traveling from the Midwest who like probably didn't vote for the president that we voted for. And yet they're driving all the way to Santa Fe to experience weird psychedelic art. Time Out magazine called us one of the 50 best things to do in the world. We got like a ton of press from all over. I was on the Today Show, I was on CBS Sunday Morning, I got a huge Rolling Stone article, a New York Times article, and it was just like this crazy explosion after we opened the house. And we started getting these reviews from people, and it was like what you'd expect. It's like, 4 stars, 5 stars, this was awesome, this was so much fun, which, we could expect that. But then we started to get some reviews like this, and emails and handwritten letters saying like, you changed my life. Going to Meow Wolf changed my life. It's like, how is this life changing? This is just like pretty art and cool sounds. What's happening here that's life changing? And so I was CEO at the time during this whole period, and it felt important to me to like dig into this type of statement, because if I could figure out what this was, then that's like the magic to scale. So I read a book by a gentleman named Joseph Pine called The Experience Economy. This was written in like the early 90s. And it was predicting that the future of the economy was going to be experience-based. And this was pretty impressive in the early 90s, considering that there was no social media. This was pre-internet. It's pretty obvious now that the experience economy is a pretty big deal. But back then, it was quite edgy for them to discover this. And this is kind of how it goes. It's like the economy at one point was commodity. It then evolved into good. It then evolved into service. And then it evolved, they predicted that it was evolving into experience. And you have different types of actions that are associated with this. Like the commodity was extracted, the good was made, the service is delivered, the experience is staged. And the way to look at that is like, if you look at the coffee industry, at first it was the coffee bean, then it was the ground and packaged coffee bean, then it was the brewed and served coffee bean, and then it was the coffee shop. And the idea of like the coffee shop that fits the experience economy is like, a lot of people will just go to the coffee shop, not because they want coffee, because they could just have coffee at home. They go to the coffee shop a lot of times because they just want to go to the coffee shop, because it provides an experience, and the coffee is sort of like the afterthought of it. But it still didn't quite explain this comment. Like, experiences aren't inherently life-changing. And so I called Joe, and I was like, Joe, I actually emailed him, he got back to me. I was like, Joe, I read your book, and how do we get to life-changing? Like, why are people having life-changing? He's like, oh, well, you need to read the latest edition of my book. Oh, okay. He's like, yeah, we just updated it like a few years ago, and we added another tier, which is called the Transformational Economy. And the Transformational Economy is a guided economy. This is where you go from staging an experience for someone to actually guiding them through the experience. So I was thinking about like transformations. Like, what is a transformation? A transformation is when someone goes from a current paradigm into a new paradigm, like a current way of thinking into a new way of thinking. And so I go back to the fridge moment. People walk up to the fridge. They're in like a normal house. They're in a normal kitchen. Everything's predictable. Everything's of the current paradigm of understanding, the current paradigm of knowing. So everything is known. Then they go up and through their own agency, they open the fridge, and they see a hallway of light that leads to possibility. Like, anything could be through that. It's not the food and drinks that they were expecting. It's a hallway that could lead to anywhere. And in that moment, I think this thing happens for folks where, like, because the fridge is more than what the fridge is supposed to be, the world has the ability to be more than what the world is supposed to be. And even more importantly, they themselves have the ability to be more than what they're supposed to be. So it's almost as if this fridge and opening the door and seeing that it leads to possibility gives them license, gives the individual license to then be leading themselves into possibility for themselves. And agency is really important. Like, the choice in a transformational economy or a transformational experience agency is really significant. The person has to make the choice to do the thing, to open the fridge, or to jump out of the airplane, or whatever the transformational experience is. If they're forced to do it, then it's not going to actually be a transformational experience. Or if they're guided, if you give them a map and say like, oh yeah, here's where the transformational moment is, it's not going to work. An agency leads to empowerment. That empowerment leads to exploration, and exploration ultimately leads to discovery. And this process of exploration and discovery seems so obvious, and it's ultimately what Meow Wolf is providing to its guests. But it's such a rare thing to find in our world. I mean, you can go out into nature, you can get onto trails, you can go traveling, go to other countries, and you can do exploring and discovering. But like every day, just like commercial interactions, retail interactions, hotel interactions, restaurant interactions, like these are pretty predictable. There's not much exploration and discovery involved. And a key component here, a key context, is the context of the unknown. So exploration and discovery can't really happen without the context of the unknown. Because if it's known, then there's no exploring and discovering to be had. It's just predictable. And your mind has mapped it, your mind has logged it, and there's no explorer, no discoverer involved. And so providing an unknown environment or an unknown context is really critical to unlocking the magic of exploration and discovery. And the interesting thing about us these days, post, now that the internet's around, social media's around, we have smartphones in our pocket, is we're on Facebook, we're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, and we're scrolling. And we're not scrolling for things that we've seen before. We're not scrolling for known content. We're scrolling for things we've never seen before. So it's almost as if we're Pavlovian, at a Pavlovian level, on a daily basis, or 100 times a day, training ourselves to search out new content. You stop at stuff you've never seen before. But then when you get out into the real world, you have stuff that you've seen before. Everything in the physical world is predictable, it's known. Location-based experiences, physical world experiences have not caught up to the level of content that the digital world has produced. And that's why I say when people are on their phones all the time, when kids are on their phone all the time, I don't get mad at the kids for being on their phone all the time. I'm yo, physical world, do a better job. Create better content, because we wouldn't be on our phone all the time if the physical world was more interesting. So you have this really interesting dichotomy there. But it's not just buildings. It's not just the architecture of a suburban development or something. The knownness, the need for knowing, the need for predictability, the need for same old, is actually something that happens inside of us, as individuals. This is a construct of that we as people do. Kids enter this world without an identity yet. The world is not understood to them. They don't know it. They don't know who they are either. So kids are constantly exploring and discovering. And the byproducts of that are things like excitement and intrigue and spirit and happiness and energy and, did I say spirit? Spirit. Laughter, happiness. There's also danger and risk, and it's not a safe place as a kid. The unknown is not safe, definitely not. But as we grow older, we need to build these constructs of identity in order to keep ourselves safe. We need to understand the world, we need to know the world, we need to know ourselves out of safety, to protect ourselves, to be risk averse. So we give ourselves, we kind of give ourselves a list of things that we like. We know what type of friends we hang out with. We know the types of food we eat. We know how we communicate. We know what kind of industry we're interested in, and we start to define the world around us in these known variables, which is great. It keeps us safe, it protects us, but it also ends up really boring. Like, we end up pretty bored, and we end up being the person that we've always been. And there's less of an opportunity for becoming the person that we're becoming. And we get stuck in the past, essentially. And it has all sorts of, there's all sorts of symptoms that kind of come from that. I don't have to list them. So there's this whole kind of industry of transformational, therapies that are very popular now, where people are trying to desperately break out of their known reality, because their known reality has essentially led them to depression or anxiety or just being bored, not being happy. So you can go outside, you can go into nature, you can meditate. Meditation's a big one. You can also go and do whatever that person's doing to help you break down that identity. But experiences are a really powerful way, in-person, location-based, immersive experiences, a really powerful way for people to step into that child again, to reconnect with the spirit of exploring and discovering this world, no matter how old you are, no matter what your age is. One of my favorite quotes is from this guest, and this is in a video that we shot right after we opened. We did a tutorial, customer testimonial video. And she's so psyched. She's just so psyched about Meow Wolf. She's like, it's like sticking your finger in an electrical socket and becoming alive again. And you could just see this beam of happiness. And we see this all the time. We see guests coming in, older guests who are pretty grumpy when they get to Meow Wolf. I had this image of this dad who came one time, kind of bigger, kind of heavy-set dad, and he's just arms crossed, just pissed off that his family wanted to go to this weirdo place called Meow Wolf. And mom and kids are pretty excited about going, but dad's I'm not having it, liberal, whatever's going on here. And then 15 minutes later, I see the same dad on his hands and knees crawling through the fireplace with the biggest smile on his face. And it was such a shining example to me of how exploration and discovery can unlock a happiness that we had forgotten about. A flexibility in our thinking that we had forgotten about. In Vegas, we created this fake grocery store called Omega Mart. It's a 5,000 square foot grocery store with about 300 products. All the products are fake, but they're actually real. It's an actual real grocery store that we have to stock, and people can buy toilet paper called Sweet Whispers, or I'm trying to think of other ones. There's a laundry detergent. Do you remember what the laundry detergent's called? I can't remember. But yeah, you can actually go shopping inside this store. And it's real trippy stuff. Oh yeah, the impact corn, that one's good. The organic pharmacy, farm at the table. And then we also have a fridge moment in the grocery store, because the fridge moment's really good. People love it here too. And it takes people into just another kaleidoscopic, really beautiful exhibition. The really interesting thing about the grocery store is that it's about the same size as a Walgreens. And this just kind of points to the power of experiences and the power of themed experiences. The grocery store itself is the size of a Walgreens or so. Go back to that slide. And we have about the same amount of SKUs as a small Walgreens. But we're charging $45 admission price to get into our grocery store. And then on top of that, our grocery store is selling 3 times more product per square foot than the average Walgreens. So it's people are going into a grocery store to buy toilet paper and laundry detergent and fake fake but real soda. And the fact that it's themed and the fact that it's like pseudo-fictional actually is like driving more sales because of it. Pretty cool project. You know, in when we talk about exploration and discovery and like the context of the unknown, art is a really special thing in the world that actually has the ability to deliver this. Like art kind of lives in that world already. Art's always trying to create something you've never seen before, and is always trying to create something that forces the brain to have to like think about it and explore it and discover it. And so doing it at scale and doing it in an immersive setting is quite an effective way to bring that spirit out in people. And then we opened a project in Denver, like I said, in September. This is like the most monumental project that we've created yet. Like I said, 50,000 square feet on 5 floors. This sculpture is like a 40-foot tall sculpture, a cathedral made out of a bunch of panels of multicolored acrylic. And the dome at the top is like 18 feet wide, and it spins. You have a wheel at the bottom, and you can spin it, and the dome spins. And then this is the Cosmohedron. This whole zone, Numina, is like this like crazy psychedelic swampy world with this amazing climbable 40-foot tall sculpture in the middle. And so I know it's kind of weird to have like such a heavy art themed attraction speaker up here during this conference. But honestly, when I think about like the work that Meow Wolf does, or like the types of findings that we've had through our process, industries like senior living or hospitals are like the first things that come to mind for me, or like airports, where it's like, what are in my mind potentially some of the most boring spaces in the world? Because I believe that like what we found is not just an entertainment thing. Like it's not just an entertainment and attraction thing. This is like a human spirit thing. That like no matter where you are, no matter how old you are, this type of imaginative spirit is something that we all need. Cool. That's my talk. Thank y'all. Appreciate the time.